Banana pudding. That's really loud. Banana pudding is it's a traditional dessert from the South. I was born there. It's a very sweet dessert, but if it's something you've ever had before, you know that it can be pretty amazing. But you have to get it homemade. If you go to a restaurant, I'm not going to say any names, but certain restaurants just don't seem to do it right. It's one of the first things I learned how to cook, and it basically started me on my culinary journey, and my mom taught me. So the focus about this is going to be my mom. So my mom was an amazing cook, but she was never formally trained at all. She had no formal training, but she knew everything about food. If I asked her about food, it didn't matter what it was, she knew what it was. I could ask her any genre, she goes, give me 10 minutes, I'll figure this out. And she could figure out the sauce for it, and I'm like, how are you doing this? I don't know. But she figured out all foods, and she knew everything. So I, as a child, wanted to know a lot about food. And I said, you know, can you show me the things that you make? Because I want to eat all of them. And she said, great, I'll teach you how to do these, but I need you to stand by me and watch what I do at all times. And I said, okay, I'll learn about how to make different types of foods. And she wanted to teach me all the intricacies of cooking. Cooking was not about cheating. If it came out of a box, somebody had to figure out how to put all that stuff in the box. So you're going to learn that part, not the box part. So I had to learn a lot about how to cook food. And it was great that I learned how to cook banana pudding because it was one of those things that my family used everywhere. Parties, everything. We all had banana pudding. It was a family tradition. So I had to learn how to make it. I have 2 children, and at both of their baby showers, I was the only guy who cooked. It's a lot of pressure. You go to the baby shower, you put down your dish, 12 women are looking at you, they're giving you that critical eye, they walk over, they take a bite, they give you a thumbs up and a little nod, and you realize, I guess I know what I'm doing. So the culinary journey was starting even at 10 years old. But a quick word about my mom. My mom was definitely one of those people. She wanted to teach you everything about food. She would talk to you and make sure that you got each step and you moved on. Gordon Ramsay could learn a lot from this. At no time did she swear or was she upset. If you burn something, you're going to clean it up because that's also your job, to clean it up and then start all over again. So I learned a lot about food and a lot about how to cook from my mom and the different intricacies of where food comes from. One of the things that my mom told me as a child, she said, one day you're going to meet the best woman ever, the woman of your dreams, and her cooking level can burn water. The 2 of you will starve to death if one of you can't cook. And I thought, okay, well, yes, I'm going to take on this prize, you know. So basically, learning to cook was one of those things that had to take place in our kitchen on her own terms. I couldn't rush her. If it was something that took 2 hours, it was going to take 2 hours of me standing there in the kitchen. So there was no cartoons at the time. I couldn't watch anything unless we got this dish finished. So back to banana pudding. Learning how to make it was something that my mom wanted me to understand. So there's a meringue involved, there's a custard involved, and you probably know there's a very popular cookie brand that you're supposed to put in there. We made our own. And she taught me how to make our own. And she said, you're gonna do this because this is a family tradition, and you're gonna carry this family tradition on. First time I made it, I burned the daylights out of the custard. Left it on, walked away, came back, scraped it off. Can we use this? Can we bring it back? No. Second time, if you've ever made a meringue, you don't put all the sugar in there at the same time. It went flat. So the third time I made it, triumph, success. So I kind of figured this whole thing about doing it right and paying attention is going to help. So that was definitely the start of where I wanted to learn more about how food works. My mom is an amazing person, and as I got older, I realized she was like having a living cookbook that you could call. I was single, and cooking's like a foreign language to you when you're single. You're just like, I don't get this at all. I might as well just be watching TV with like the foreign language button pushed on. Like, I have no idea. So I'd call her up, and moms have, as you probably all know, this magic to know exactly what you're talking about, even though you can't explain it properly on the phone. Mom, what's a double boiler? You don't have one of those. Here's what you do. Take a pot, put some water on it, put another pot on top of it. Oh, sounds interesting. As you heard earlier, sometimes measurements don't always make sense. I would call my mom up and say, you know, there's a dressing I want to make. How much ingredients should I put in this? Put some of this, some of that, a little of this, and a pinch of that in there, and then you'll have it. Describe some, Mom. You'll know. Okay, is my sum the same as your sum? Because when I did my sum last time, the house almost caught on fire. And she's like, no, you'll figure it out. So I'd try it, and 1, 2, 3 times I'd usually get it. So it was always hard to try and figure out, and even now in the kitchen where I work professionally, sometimes I'll explain to someone, hey, make this. How long should it go? You'll know. It's a little more expensive then, though, because my boss doesn't like you'll know as an answer. So culinary enjoyment was something that I wanted to pursue more. And I've learned that food is definitely something that helps bring people together when you're happy or when you're sad. I had a sister, and unfortunately she passed away from breast cancer. But we talked about opening a restaurant and using some of my mom's dishes in her restaurant. And that would be awesome. And we wanted to really showcase how the cooking style takes place so that you don't use food from a box. And we talked a lot about this and where things were gonna go, and then years later she passed. And we went to the funeral, and then at the repast, what was sitting on the table? Banana pudding. And my mom made it. But she made it, and then she said, you know, I want you to make another one, because tomorrow all the family's coming over again. We're definitely from the South when you know you have to have more than one repast for a funeral. So I made the next one, and it got really high marks from all the family. But of course they all knew, because they've been eating it for years. But you know, like I said, moms have a magic, but food has a magic. You know, if you know, mom magic is knowing everything. Food is about warming your belly, but it's also going to warm your heart at the same time. And it kept us all happy, even though we were in a really sad situation. So I wanted to do this whole thing professionally, and I decided, okay, food is going to be my job. And I've had some really weird jobs in my life, but food was going to be my job. And I decided that culinary school was the way to go. So I went here, just down the street, to Pima Community College, and went and talked to the coordinators there at their culinary program. And they sat me in an interview, and the first words right out of their mouth are, what is wrong with you? And I said, why? I said, this is a really hard business. I said, but I like to cook. And they said, we all like to cook, but this is a really hard business. And I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna try it. I'm giving you money. So they were like, okay. So I went, and a couple weeks later, I get the letter. And the letter says, okay, you passed. Or you passed the interview, and welcome to culinary school. And I had to call the first person who needed to know. And that was my chef, my mom. So I called her, and I told her, I said, hey, guess what? I got accepted into culinary school. And there was a pause, which I know is the mom magic pause. And she goes, you'll do fine. Which you'll do fine means you better break a leg or else, because I've taught you everything that you need to know. So 2 years went by. Meats, plating, sauces, catering, fabrication, numbers. I have no idea how I kept up with all this. I had a full-time job. I went to school full-time. I did all this. It was nerve-wracking. I was one of the oldest people in my class, which is a little intimidating when you're in community college. You know, and you're sitting there and you're staring around and you tell somebody, hey, have you ever had this dish? I'm not old enough to remember that. And you just kind of sigh and move along. But then, after those 2 years, I had to take my finals. And one of my finals was the baking final. So that class was an amazing class. I love the chef. He's an amazing chef. He's all around. He spends a lot of time in Phoenix. And he said, okay, I want all of you guys to make a dish that has some sort of connection between all the elements you've learned, but I want you to make something that you're really comfortable with. As soon as he let us loose, the class went bonkers. People were running the cabinets, they were grabbing stuff, they had all these ideas, people were writing stuff down. Somebody tried to build a sugar tower, it died. The stuff was melting. I'm pretty sure somebody was crying in the corner. And I'm sitting there going, well, what can I do that's going to be great, but that I feel comfortable with? And the light bulb came on. And I thought, well, I know what I can do. So I went and got all my mise en place. I set everything out, put it all on the table, and I was going to make banana pudding. But I was going to make it my mom's way. So I started to make it, and I was going to make the cookies that we all know. And I go in there, and I was making them from scratch. And at that point, the chef comes over and looks over my shoulder and says, what are you doing? So I'm making Nilla wafers, but I'm not going to call them that. And he goes, I've never seen anybody do that before. And he walked away, and I thought, I've stumped him for something. So I thought about it for a little while and plated the whole thing, because it's not really a dessert you can plate, but I put it on the plate, got the whole thing to look really nice, and I gave it to the chef. And he did the same thing, the critical look. Took a bite, gave me the thumbs up and the nod, and I knew I had passed. So of course I had to call the first person who needed to know, chef. So I called my mom up and I told her, I said, hey, I just want to let you know that I passed my baking final by making banana pudding. There was a much longer pause this time. And she said, well, of course you did. So basically, at that point, I realized the crown had passed to me at that point. So sadly, my mom passed away last year. So she never got a chance to see me in action. It's what I do now. It's working as a chef here just down the street at Cafe a la Carte. But all of her recipes live on in me and live on in her grandkids. And they love my cooking. They love whenever I cook for them. They all enjoy banana pudding. I cook it at functions and for friends and all over the place. For some reason, I get an automatic invite anytime there's a gathering or something like that, because people want me to cook. You know, we're having a barbecue. Are you free? Of course. Am I coming? And they're like, well, we had an idea. But one of the things that always happens whenever people call me up and they go, hey, we're having this thing. Are you willing to come? I'm like, yeah. Hey, can you bring that one thing? Yeah, I can bring that one thing.